I'm Caroline Rose, and we are going to talk about songwriting. My first musical experience was really memorable. I have this fake uncle, my funkle. He'd always bring instruments whenever he would visit. He would always bring like a melodica or a little guitar. And I remember my first musical experience was jamming with him. And I was like noodling on a guitar, and we were having like an improv jazz session basically. And that was the first time I had ever really felt music. And I never really lost that. Like I feel like I could be playing like a tin can and I would still have the same like childish wonder about what kind of sounds you could make from it. And you know, the cool thing about music is even if you're playing a guitar or piano or whatever, even if you know like 2 chords, you can make a song out of 2 chords. It's so cool. I took piano lessons when I was a kid, and I just hated it because I never wanted to do homework. I was like, I want to just tinker around and explore. And that for me has never failed me. Songwriting has always been an outlet for me. I've tried doing, like my friends, they'll be like, do you want to do this song a day thing? And it's like a song a day for 10 days or whatever. And I'll be like, yeah, sure. I'll step outside my comfort zone. And I get like one day in and I'm just like, I just don't like this. Yeah. It feels too forced to me. It feels too much like homework. And I've never liked homework. Yeah. That was a reason why I didn't go to music school. Like I didn't want to go to music school. I just refused to make music homework. Songwriting has always been an outlet for me. A lot of people, especially like young people, when we're young and just discovering our own emotions and our own feelings and learning how to be a part of the world, it's really overwhelming. There's just so many feelings. And you have to navigate through it. And it's not like we have all this access to mental health, like therapists and these different outlets that we can use. Like people have to get crafty and really look out for themselves. And songwriting can totally be a very useful tool in that way. Even if you don't have any talent, like it can still be a useful tool to just express yourself. One of the things that I always rely on is when I just live my life and I just live an inspiring life, the art ends up being an extension of whatever I'm doing, like how I'm living. I think like a lot of it is experiential, like whatever you're going through at the time, what the lifestyle that you're living. If I'm traveling a lot, I end up kind of making more travel oriented sounding stuff. Yeah. I think when I was like in my early 20s and it was really my first bout of freedom as an adult, and I was living in a car, my songs really dictated the way that I was living, and I gravitated towards other vagabonds, like other people who were kind of transients and loved adventure and like kind of spontaneous nature. For Superstar, I had a pretty solid idea of what I wanted to do, and I had been kind of like cooking up these ideas for a long time. Mm-hmm. We had toured around Loner for like 2 years straight. During that time when we were touring, I had just had all these little nuggets of song ideas that I had mostly made voice memos of. When I'm moving, like when I'm moving either walking or on a hike or driving, it always kind of piques my creativity. I don't really know why, but I always get these ideas just kind of when I'm moving, and I would write down all these ideas that I came up with. So I had all these notes and all these voice memos, and because I did it myself, I could just go through all of the voice memos and be like, this one, this one, this one, this one, and then start kind of creating like a narrative arc. And I had just an idea of like the narrative arc that I wanted it to feel like, not necessarily what I wanted it to sound like, although I knew I wanted it to sound kind of like a over-the-top pop record. Yeah, but it's not always like that. Sometimes it's like with Loner, it was completely different. I just wanted to make something that sounded like all the different facets of my personality. I recently listened back to my earliest songs, like some of the first songs I ever wrote. And there were some things that stood out to me, but the biggest thing that stood out to me was that it was almost like a diary entry. But the other thing that stood out to me was I could have gone deeper. I think that is something that looking back on my younger self when I first started writing, it was as though I knew people were going to be listening. And I remember even when I would write in a diary or a journal, I would always kind of hold back because I was afraid that somebody was going to read it. So that actually happened to me when I was a little kid. I used to write very, very raw emotional stuff. My sister found my diary once and read it to my parents. I would say my best advice, and I wish I could have told this to my younger self, but nobody had told me this, to just don't hold back, because the best songs are the ones that are the realest, most honest about how you're feeling. Those are always the ones that are going to hit people the hardest and the most important songs to be writing, because that's what people really need to hear.